Hi, my name's Phil and welcome to LabourVision, where we talk about Labour policies. And in this video, with the pre-election budget announced, it's worth looking at what we know Labour will be doing to try and generate growth. So I'll be taking a look at policies designed particularly to help small businesses, which provides for incomes for just over half of all working people in the UK. We don't, of course, know how Jeremy Hunt's budget will impact Labour's spending plans, of course, so we'll have to wait for that. But we can take a look at the legislative and policy programme. Labour's first policy for small businesses is to legislate against late payments, larger businesses delaying payments to smaller businesses in the supply chain to suit themselves, but placing those smaller businesses under unfair financial pressure. According to Labour's Shadow Business Minister Jonathan Reynolds, at any one time, small businesses are collectively waiting on about £20 billion worth of overdue invoices, which puts small businesses at risk of going under due to cash flow problems. Labour plan to force large businesses to audit their company's payment practices so that late payments to suppliers and contractors would become part of their public reporting. This would let small businesses be able to check up on them and know whether their large customer or potential large customer has a habit of paying their bills on time or not. Second, Labour proposed scrapping business rates, or more specifically, replacing the entire system with the aim of reducing the burden on local high street businesses. The details for what exactly replaces it is still being consulted on, but the aim is to reduce the burden on high street businesses and shift it elsewhere. The implication is that it will still raise the same amount of money, just with different distribution. Third is removing trade barriers to exports for small businesses. Now, this is effectively tackling Brexit without trying to say Brexit too often. As a result of leaving the customs union single market, all businesses now have lots of red tape to deal with in order to export to our closest and most important market, with no reduction in trade barriers elsewhere that has compensated. You know, we've had some small reductions in trade barriers being agreed with a small number of countries outside Europe, but the overall cost of trade to those countries is still higher than it was with our European neighbours, so it's a net negative to trade. And small businesses are always hit the hardest. Like a large business can use economies of scale to pay for dedicated staff to navigate their way around these trade barriers. The barriers are still there, they still have an extra cost, but you can at least deal with them yourself in-house. Small businesses can't afford to employ people to deal with this, and obviously as a small business you may not be able to have enough of a profit to make exporting profitable at all. I mean, you'll have to hire additional services like customs agents, for example. Labour also cite the problem of being invited to trade shows at short notice. That's basically impossible to attend. It can take weeks, sometimes months, to sort out the permissions you need to attend a trade show, because that's you working in another country. So if someone says, oh, do you want to go to this trade show in a few weeks, you'll have to say no, because you will never get those permissions sorted out. Now, given that Labour are still ruling out access to the single market and customs union for now, they cannot promise to be able to deal with all of these problems. But they do have proposals. They particularly cite an SPS agreement to reduce trade barriers to animal and plant-based exports, mutual recognition of qualifications to reduce barriers for some service exports. Both of these would need agreement with the EU. Neither goes as far as rejoining, but it is still a lot more than the Conservatives are proposing. Fourth, there's something that will help small businesses and struggling workers alike. Thanks to a complete disregard for education and lifelong learning under the Tories, we have a widening skills gap. The Conservatives introduced T-levels, which were supposed to address local skill shortages, but they do nothing. As someone who was still teaching as these were being introduced, I can say there was zero government support. The idea was you give these T-levels to teachers, it's like, oh, they're flexible, you see, you can map it to your local skill shortages, you see. And it's like, okay, so how do we gauge those local skill shortages? You want individual teachers to get a consortium of local businesses together and on our own time to work out what they are with zero government support? Yeah, that's what we want you to do. Yeah, good one. Proper back of a cigarette packet thinking. Labour have specific proposals of providing the support to colleges in order to address these local skills gaps. There will also be a push for young people in terms of to be taught basic skills by specialist teachers, which is increasingly not the case these days. especially as salaries for teachers has fallen a lot in real terms and the workload has massively increased since 2010. Now, Labour haven't said they're going to start to boost those salaries back up again, but they didn't say that in 1997 either, but they did. And if you want specialist teachers for key subjects, like say maths, science and so on, you're going to have to pay them. Particularly as those teachers also have the very skills where shortages exist in the wider economy. Fifth, Labour are proposing to hire hundreds more planners in order to deal with planning applications more quickly, funded by an increase in stamp duty for non-UK residents. Let's see the Daily Mail complain about that one. The emphasis here from Labour is on the benefit to small business builders who will be able to get approval for projects more quickly. Labour are also proposing to unlock the £200 billion worth of small-scale energy projects currently stuck in the planning process in order to not only get businesses able to start up more quickly, but increase much needed grid capacity if we want to decarbonise. It's been reported that there are small-scale energy projects setting up, no problem at all in some parts of the country, but then basically an identical proposal in another part of the country gets held up for years, sometimes gets rejected, despite the obvious need. Finally, addressing the cost of energy itself. So despite assorted Tory shills saying that net zero is making us poorer and colder, the opposite is true. The reason energy bills doubled for domestic users and much more for business users is because the price of gas went up after Russia's invasion of Ukraine. It wasn't low carbon energy that suddenly cost more, and lots of businesses had to close down because they simply couldn't afford the skyrocketing price of energy. Labour make the point that shifting more of our energy production to homegrown low carbon power will stabilise prices for businesses. And there are other proposals as well, but I would say those half dozen show the most promise for helping small businesses in a major way, upon which we are dependent for not only our economy, but most of our jobs as well. I'll link to the relevant section on the website so you can read the whole thing if interested. If you found the video useful, please click the like button and subscribe to the channel. And until next time, I'll see you later.